Well, as I said before, there's been a lot of self-congratulation following the weekend by-election, but there is not a load of comfort here for either of the major political parties. The coalition, via its National Party candidate, has gone backwards, though when you think of the coalition position in New South Wales, a very popular premier, but she's before ICAC, and that report's not yet handed down. 2 ministers gone, one under an ICAC investigation, the other under a police investigation, and a by-election caused by the resignation of a member over, admittedly, so far unproven allegations. You'd think any opposition would make mincemeat of the government. And by-elections historically favour oppositions. But as I said earlier, the votes are diabolical for both major parties. The Nationals suffered a swing of almost 5% at the last election in a seat they've held for over 90 years, a further swing of 2.6% against them on Saturday night. Or to put it brutally, 43,000 people voted, and the winning candidate, so far representing the National Party, has got a piddling 13,000 votes out of 43%, 31%. Two-thirds of the electorate didn't want him. For the Labor Party, well, it's beyond diabolical for pretty obvious reasons. Joel Fitzgibbon identified those reasons months ago, saying that Labor had developed an obsession with climate change and that Labor have to, quote, dig ourselves out of the climate change hole we've dug for ourselves. The weakness of Joel Fitzgibbon's case, which puts him in electoral peril, is that he too is towing the party line, as he'd say he has to, on net zero emissions, arguing that Labor must reaffirm its commitment, he wrote in January, to net zero emissions by 2050, now an almost universal consensus, which of course it isn't. On this program, I've cited literally hundreds of scientists who argue there is no consensus. Professor Stanley B. Goldenberg is a meteorologist at the US National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration. He has said, and I quote, "It is a blatant lie put forth in the media that makes it seem there's only a fringe of scientists who don't buy into anthropogenic global warming," unquote. Well, where Joel Fitzgibbon is right is where he says, quote, Labor has developed an obsession about climate change. The voters at the weekend knew that not only are their jobs at risk, but also, depending on the time of day, up to 80% of electricity generated is made available from coal-fired power. Now, this Fitzgibbon is a good bloke. He knows the area. His old man was the federal member before him. But at the last election, he preferenced the Greens over One Nation when the Greens are totally opposed to coal-fired power and One Nation were in favour of it. So on Saturday, another swing against Labor, 6.9%. At the last election, a swing of 3.89%. It's almost 11% in a state seat. Primary vote, 9,000 out of 43,000, barely deserving the status of a political party, 21.7% of the vote. This is almost 4 in every 5 voters don't want Labor. Joel Fitzgibbon's joined me. He must surely know, well, not know which way to turn. Joel, thank you for your time. I mean, the swing against you at the last federal election was 14.2%. Nearby Shortland, 10%. If Labor keep mouthing this net zero carbon dioxide emissions, you're gone, surely.
Certainly, Alan, the Labor brand is in trouble, and if we are not careful, it'll go the same way as the Kodak brand, that is, disappear for a failure to move with the times and respond to its customer base. And our customer base is, of course, those people who we were formed to represent, and they obviously believe we've let them down, and whether they are right or wrong, Alan, we need to respond to that. And we haven't responded.
But you're dead right, Joe. I was going to ask you that.
Again.
Yeah. I was going to ask you, how long does it take to learn? Yeah, I mean, how long does it take them to learn in Canberra? The last federal election, your seat, was the worst Labor performance in 109 years, and yet the whole seat know the Fitzgibbon family backwards. So there was something...
Right, Alan, despite having an outstanding local member, that's right. I'm glad you got that bit right. Well, no, it's terrible, and we are in real trouble. And, you know, on Saturday, people were coming up. I was warmly received on the booths on Saturday, and I appreciated that. But they're saying, "G'day, Fitzy. Great to see you doing a good job. But, gee, what's going on with your party?" And we see they're now against gas. And
but see, they
just walk straight past and take the One Nation or National Party how to vote.
But see, you're still talking about net zero emissions, and the punter is a wake up to this. I mean, that result is diabolical. Jody Mackay, I understand the backroom boys are mobilising as you and I speak now to have her stand down, and that'd be sensible. But Matt Canavan made the point, his party as well, and Labor, the message from Saturday is voters don't want politicians, quote, playing footsie with woke concepts like net zero emissions. Do you agree with that?
Well, I'll make the point, Alan, that governments all around the world are making these commitments to net zero emissions.
Yeah, well, there's no leaders, but followers.
Without any evidence that they are going to achieve that objective. And that International Energy Agency report, which was released last week, I think was a bit of tongue-in-cheek and a wake-up call to all these countries that if they're really serious about making those commitments, then they're going to have to do some pretty extraordinary things like close down their industry.
Absolutely.
Start walking rather than driving and giving up their annual holidays on aircraft.
Now, stop flying in the planes. Yep, stop flying the planes.
Yeah, that's right.
But do you talk about this in the party room?
I'm not surprised you've read it. I actually think that because of our unique situation and our progress on innovation and technology like carbon capture and storage, we actually could meet zero net emissions in Australia without doing any harm to our mining industry, our electricity generation sector or our traditional workforce. But you and I won't be around to even judge that, I suspect, Alan. So, you know, I'm a politician, Alan.
Yes.
And if people want us to make a commitment to doing something by 2050, and I think there's a chance that technology might get us there, then I'll support it. But I spend all of my time.
They won't be here to see the damage.
I spend all my time thinking about what's going to happen next year, in 10 years' time, in 20 years' time, when I do hope to still be around. And I'll continue to defend those who have supported me and my electorate for now
Joel,
many years.
Why would you preference the Greens at the last election who hate coal mining against one nation who supported it?
Well, you and I have had this discussion before, Alan. It doesn't matter who I preference. I'm always one of the last two people standing in the count. My preferences are never going to be distributed. And what I seek to do in my how to vote is to keep it simple. I don't want people going from the bottom to the top and back to the middle and halfway to the bottom. I want them to follow a clear path. And my how to vote said Fitzgibbon, then you go up the ballot paper and hopefully not make a mistake. Well, that's the only thing that drove my preference decision at the last federal election.
Joel, that's a good news story. I don't buy it. But look, how bad is it? Because on Saturday night, the vote in Singleton at one stage was below 20%. Now, Albanese and co obviously don't believe anything you're saying, otherwise they'd have you on the front bench. And isn't it true when it comes to coal-fired power, voters were telling you, and you just made this point, that they've heard what you said, but Fitzy, we don't believe Labor. Now, when are they going to stop demonising coal? Go on.
They don't trust us, Alan.
No.
They don't believe us. They accuse us of talking the talk but not walking the walk. They say we failed at the first test. And the most recent test was when we were invited to support the establishment of a gas-fired generator in the Hunter Valley last Thursday, and we decided to oppose it extraordinarily, given it's a gas-fired generator designed to take hydrogen when, if we ever get sufficient quantities of hydrogen at the right price to run that generator. So it's pretty extraordinary stuff, and you know, people are asking the question.
But is there a weakness also in prosecuting? Is there a weakness in prosecuting the case? There you were, fighting a state issue, and you've got a coalition minister in the government, Matt Keane, barking out renewable policy. Every other day he wants to go to 100% renewables, and his team wins the election. Yeah,
well, go figure, Alan. I mean, the Labor Party has got itself into a terrible twist. This all started, of course, when Julia Gillard sat down to that signing ceremony with Bob Brown in 2010, and was given further impetus, you know, with the Adani convoy and the like, and all those associated issues during the 2019 campaign. Most of the punters I talked to in the regions believe wrongly, by the way, that Labor is constantly in bed with the Greens. And while ever that is the perception, Alan, we won't pick up regional seats or indeed hold regional seats. We can't form government without them.
You can't. Now, finally, why wouldn't you then, in the light of Saturday, walk into the party room this week and call for a leadership spill so that Labor can determine whether it wants to change direction? Why wouldn't you do that?
Because my main objective, Alan, is to change the party.
You might have to change the leader.
Blowing it up, it's my assessment that blowing it up is not the most likely way to secure the outcome that I'm looking for. So I'll continue to calmly and methodically and responsibly argue the case within the party in the hope that more people in the party understand this is not just about coal mining, Alan. This is about jobs and job security and giving more respect to, talking more and more about, and to, the people who get up and work hard every day. That's
well, they don't get it. They don't get it in your party, I can tell you, and they're going to be punished and line up for another defeat. But it's always good that you line up.
I'll keep plugging away.
Yeah, keep plugging away. Good to talk to you, Joel, and thank you for your time. There is, that's Joel Fitzgibbon, the federal member for the federal seat of Hunter. What do you think out there in viewerland? Email me, alan@skynews.com.au, on the text line 0414 000 848.